Good morning and welcome to this Audit, Risk and Finance Committee meeting for today, the 10th of May. I just wanted to get the meeting underway, and our first item of business is apologies, and we have... Okay, yeah, so the first item is because Mr. Peters is an apology today, he's asked me to chair the meeting, so we need a resolution to allow me to chair the meeting. So could I have a mover for that, please? Thank you.
Happy to second.
Thank you, Mayor Rees. Any discussion on the motion? I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Oh, conflict of interest. Against, carried. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. First item is to receive apologies, and we have had an apology from Mr. Peters. I'm happy to receive those. Can I have a seconder for the motion, please? Thank you, Mayor Rees. Any discussion on the motion? No discussion. I'll put that resolution. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Next item is to confirm the order of business. It's as outlined in the agenda. There's no late items or public forum, so we'll take that as read as being the order that we'll take this today, which moves us to item 3, interest register. Are there any updates to the interest register? Any matters of conflict for today's meeting? No? Cool, thank you very much. Public forum, nothing has been identified for the public forum. Nothing's been notified, so there's no items in public forum. Confirmation of minutes. Now we have the minutes there of the meeting of 31 March 2016. They're on pages 6 to 12. Could I have a mover that those minutes are a true and correct record? Thank you, Councillor McGurk. A seconder. Thank you, Mayor Rees. Any discussion? Okay, no, there being no discussion, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Status report. The resolution is to receive the status report. It's there on pages 13 and 14. I do note that all items on the status report have been completed. So I'm not sure if they need to stay on there, but any discussion on the status report? Okay, could I have a mover that the status report be received, please? Thank you, Councillor Barker. Seconded, Councillor McGurk. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. There is no chairperson's report. Yes, no, there is none. Okay, Council's Key Organisational Risk Progress Report number 2. These are on pages 15 to 31 in your agendas paper. The recommendation is that we receive this report, and prior to going to that, I'd ask Ms. Harrison to talk to it. Thank you.
Through the Chair, so this is the second progress report that's been undertaken on the Council's Key Organisational Risks. The format has been kept reasonably similar to what was presented last time. Section 5 of the covering report covers some of the feedback that was taken from the previous meeting of the subcommittee in February, and we have certainly developed some of our incorporated some of that feedback in the report. So happy to take any questions or comments on that.
Thank you for that. Councillor McGurk.
Yeah, got a couple of questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I look at paragraph 4.3, latter part is, I'm just wondering about the key risks which those have the largest effect on the council meeting's objectives, considering the magnitude, effect and likelihood of occurring. Is there a little bit more explanation that we can give, or what kind of criteria might use to evaluate the magnitude of the effect and the likelihood? Is there any kind of science to that? I saw there's some comments about, 1 in 100-year events and
Pass across to Roger Ball, who should be able to assist with that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just moving across to my table. Through the chair, could I just clarify with the councillor? Are we talking about the risk number 1, the natural events? Is that the?
No, just for point of clarity, just a bit of the background report, looking at paragraph 4.3, the sort of the latter part of that one there. Considering the magnitude, the effect, and likelihood of occurring, I'm just wondering about the science, or is there some kind of formula, or is it a bit of a suck it and see? Because it becomes relevant later, because I've got a couple of questions later on.
The general approach is certainly to try and use specific criteria. What we've done in the past, say for example with the natural hazard stuff, is we use an Australia and New Zealand standard, and it follows a what's called a SMUG analysis, using seriousness, manageability, consequences, those sorts of things. So if that's going to your question, councillor, certainly there are specific criteria that we would apply. Thank you. Sure. Through you, Mr. Chairman, behind the risk map on the right on page 25, we have a more detailed set of criteria and consequences that relate to each of these assessments. So there is a further page, if you like, that we can drill down into and bring that along. Quite happy to. The risk, the residual risk rating that's presented here is, I guess, the end result of the consultations and discussion.
Yeah, well, thank you. So long as there's some kind of sort of analysis goes on behind it.
Absolutely, yes.
Right, got it. This one's got 2 buttons. It's easy to confuse someone. 2 buttons. Yeah, thank you for the report. Again, it's the second time round, and I see that it's been beefed up for various matters, and that's fabulous. And most of the risks to me seem to be really, really well covered off. And I sort of wonder or ponder what is the next sort of phase on this type of reporting back to the committee. Now that we seem to be identifying the critical risks and what's in behind those to protect us from those, I suppose, crystallising. And I just was pondering what do you see as the next phase on this?
I think just talking internally, the thing that we're most keen to do next is to get a better alignment between the risks identified here and tying them into organisational objectives as a whole. And although we have a number of places that we can go to identify what those organisational objectives are, we'd like to do a bit of work around getting that more specifically outlined in terms of those SMART objectives, and then linking those back through to these. So that's our next phase, and we'd probably see this changing not terribly much in the next couple of meetings, but as we go on, it could take on a slightly different look.
Okay, thank you. And just a comment on page 29. It's a fraud, corruption, or theft type risk that's been identified. Under managing the risk, we've got council has a system of internal controls over all aspects of its business. Indications suggest that these controls may be weak in some areas. And I just wanted to make a comment on that. I suppose as a general comment, you can always say there's weaknesses in any system. But I'd like to think that if we knew what a weakness was, that we would be working pretty quickly to fix it up, to eliminate that as quick as possible, if indeed it is a critical risk. So that's really just a comment about that sort of phraseology. So if there's no other sort of questions on the report, yes, Councillor Noonan.
Mr. Chair, just two things that I picked up when I was looking at it, and the first one is on page 22, and it's regarding customer aggression threatening health and safety of those who work for and with council, and I appreciate that elected representatives have been included. The experience that I've had was at the Nelson Market, and I'd have to say that actually the staff seem to look after the elected members, and I don't know whether that's actually what the intent is or what training they have. We don't have any training. I just wanted to bring that to your attention because it might be something that you want to address if the staff are feeling that they have responsibility for our welfare, and I think that probably they are right, but maybe those of us that go to the market, you may wish to have a conversation with us about that. And the other point was on page 24, where it talks about staff members working alone, and those lone workers are actually named, and I did wonder whether that was wise, where those lone workers are. I don't know how, this is probably not a public document, although today it is, so I just wondered whether it would be better to leave those areas not named. Just a suggestion.
Thanks for those comments. I'm sure that's been noted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, and I would be happy to have a look at both of those. Thanks.
Okay. So on that note, could someone move the resolution that the report be in its attachment be received? Thank you, Councillor Barker. Seconded. Thank you, Councillor McGurk. In that case, if there's no other discussion, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Next item on the agenda is the balance sheet reconciliation. This is contained on pages 32 to 38 of the agenda, and I will pass this over to Ms Harrison to talk to.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a new report that we are proposing to bring to the subcommittee annually, effectively for information prior to going into the year-end process when we will be audited, and really it's just to provide some level of assurance that our balance sheet is being reconciled regularly, and I'd like to hand over to Tracy if she'd like to add anything further.
Through the chair. Excuse me. I appreciate that the list of balance sheet items is somewhat exhaustive, and some of it may not be entirely meaningful to some of you. It does represent the way our system works, as well as real things, if you like. So I apologise for that, but it is complete. As I've noted, the frequency of reconciling balance sheet items varies depending on what that item is. So those things where there's a lot of transactions, and by that I mean thousands per month, those are reconciled at least monthly. All reconciliations are checked by a senior member of our team. And those accounts where there are very infrequent changes, often at the end of the year as part of the annual reporting process, those are only reconciled once a year. Not entirely sure what more. Oh, no, there is more I can say. Excuse me. What we've tried to do with this report, so in the middle, if you like, of the columns, we've given you a balance, which is where it says February, and then we've said a risk amount, and what we mean by that is kind of exactly what it says, but what I'd like to point out is that accounting risk, and many of these are only accounting risks, are largely to do with classifications. So it might be, these will be things that audit will look at and say, well, is it appropriate that is an accrual, for instance. It's not that it doesn't exist, it's just a classification thing. The only other risks of any note are really related to the loans that we have, community loans, that kind of thing. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, Nikki. Councillor Matheson has got a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not a member of this committee, but I do enjoy your company. Can I go to the bottom of the balance sheet where we've got the Theatre Royal? What was that look for? You are saying here that they are due to pay in February $60,000, and I presume that is part of the loan. Is that principal and interest on the loan?
What page are you on there, Councillor Matheson?
Number 9 at the top of it, 34.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. It's about 6 or 7 from the bottom.
Through the chair, yes, that's right. Our expectation at the moment is that yes, that would be the case.
Am I right in, through you, Mr. Chair, am I right in saying that we haven't received anything at this stage?
Through the chair, I would have to check that. I don't think so. The division between current and non-current loans is something that we only update once a year. So at any given point in time, a current loan is 1 year's outstanding, regardless of what has been paid.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I can just stay on this for a moment. This loan was taken out some years ago, and I'm on the understanding that there's been little, if no, payment at all since that period. And I'm certainly not trying to be disrespectful to anybody, but I feel it's now getting to the stage where we should take some action. And whether we're going to recover anything at all on this loan. And I would suggest it's been there for more than 10 years. It's getting a little bit ludicrous, really, that we just keep rolling it over and living in hope. So it might be advisable, through you, Mr. Chair, if either Nikki or Tracy could give us at the next meeting an update on the history to this point of this particular loan, because I think it is time it was addressed.
Would you like to make a comment, Ms. Harrison?
Through the chair, I was just going to comment that there have been no repayments and it is interest-free, and that it was all effectively put on hold when there were discussions around us taking over the building, but there's been no further discussions on that point.
Okay, thank you for that suggestion. Look, I'll pop that to the committee. Would the committee like to see an update on that matter?
Look at the all accounts of financing of the Theatre Royal and the repayments thereof.
Councillor McGurk? Yep. Mia, you'd like to see a report on that?
Mr. Murray, I think there is, I was going to ask a question around this as well, because I was interested firstly that it's in the risk column, so if I could just understand, perhaps before responding to whether I need a report, just to understand why it's deemed to be in the risk column, and that might be around accounting risk as opposed to risk. I just need to understand what that is, and then if I could respond on the report.
Through the chair, the only reason that we have recognised it as a risk is in as much as any money that we have lent to anybody is potentially a risk. There is no specific value on whether or not the Theatre Royal can or will repay it.
So, Mr. Chair, what I would say is that, and I'm going to deal with this quite carefully. There was 1 year where I where I abstained from voting for the long-term plan. It was the year when this loan was introduced. And at some point we are going to have to address the fact that loans where there has never been a repayment might struggle to be classified as loans. And I think at some point we really do need to have that discussion, and so perhaps now's the time. I can't see us addressing it immediately. I think it is something that we are going to have to address through the next long-term plan. Is probably the appropriate time to do it. But at the moment we certainly aren't, I am a little uncomfortable about this particular item being classified as a loan, would be the way I would describe it. That was my reason for actually at the long-term plan stage abstaining from voting it out, because on the basis of the information that I had at that time, I couldn't see it ever being treated as a loan with repayments coming back. So we are going to have to address it. The consequence of addressing it is reasonably significant, and my view at this point would be that in bringing a paper back to council, the officers might want to think about how we do that. Certainly, treating it independently of the asset would be quite an expensive process.
Yes, okay, thanks. So I suppose having not been involved with the Theatre Royal in terms of what's gone on previously and in the past, sitting here today for mine, it's actually, I would have thought it was a reasonably simple question of, is it a loan or not, in which case I would have expected some sort of agreement with the entity about that, and that would stipulate whether there's any loan repayments or interest or whatever the case may be, and or some variations to that agreement. And I appreciate that it might be slightly unclear at the moment, but I'm picking up from the accounting staff that, or sorry, Ms. Hughes and co, that they're according to the technical accounting interpretation of the documentation, there should be a bit coming back this year because it's in current liabilities, if I'm reading that correctly. And therefore we're expecting something back this year in terms of a technical accounting for this. Now that may be at variance with what is actually happening, and I appreciate that, but I think that what it's highlighted for me is that there is unclarity. There's unclarity here in terms of expectations. There's probably not unclarity with the documentation, I might add, but don't know that, and it needs to be, I suppose, progressed a little bit somewhere to resolve the situation. And if anything, that I completely agree with the Mayor in that it's something that just needs to come forward, but it needs to be on the radar somewhere, is the suggestion. Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just on that, while that page 34 has 60,000, page 37 has 1.44 million. So am I right in saying that the total loan is 1.44 million, but normally we would be anticipating 60,000 being paid back per annum?
Through the chair, the loan documentation it's a $1.5 million interest-free loan with repayments of $60,000 per annum.
Consequently, they have paid something back for it to be dropped from 1.5 to 1.44. They must have made one payment.
No, through the chair, but you need to add the current to the term to get the balance through the chair. So the balance is still 1.5 million.
If I may, one more clarification.
If I could just interject here, in fact, arguably you could say that the years they haven't repaid the 60 is also owing, arguably.
So where it says February and the dollars amount, which in this case is 60, and the next column is the risk amount, and that's got 60 but no commentary, I'm reading that as it is at risk of not being received when I look at all the other commentary in that format. Am I correct?
Through the excuse me, through the chair. Again, there is no value given whether there is commentary or not as to whether we consider it more risky than any of the other loans we have to community organisations at this stage. It is only the very matter that we have loaned the money and they are community organisations.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Barker.
Election deposits are on a line there. $1,600. Is it some deposits not been repaid? Is that what that means? That's about 16 candidates' deposits, I would calculate. No, they must all be repaid unless they only get 10% of the least successful candidate, as I recall.
Through the chair, I'm afraid I can't answer that. I haven't looked at each specific reconciliation myself.
I'm just surprised to see it there because in my experience I've only once noticed when someone didn't get their deposit back because they didn't get 10% of the least successful candidate in votes.
Councillor Councillor Matheson.
Just two short ones. First of all, we are definitely going to get a report for the next meeting on Theatre Royal.
Perhaps not for the next meeting, but it's on the radar.
Well, I'm not a member of this committee, but I'd be very keen to start working on it as soon as possible. And I didn't think it would take very long to put it together.
Yeah, look, if I could call an adjournment while I discuss this and we get something sorted in terms of the correct process forward. Thank So we re-adjourn, is that? Okay, so we re-adjourn. Thank you very much for your indulgence for that brief matter, just to sort of get a bit of process around that. What we've decided to do is as long as the committee agrees, is to ask the staff to bring back a report to the next meeting on the Theatre Royal loan, and then we're just going to leave it at that. It doesn't need a resolution. We just will note that will come back to the next meeting for us to receive at that point in time. Grants? No, we only want to talk about the loan at this stage, I think.
I just want a status report as to where it is.
Where it's at, yeah.
Yep.
Well, I think there's enough sort of conversation about what we're looking for people to pick up on what that's about. Okay, so any other comment, any other questions on the balance sheet?
Loans Rainbow. On the first page, page 34, and Loans Rainbow is $12,857. What on earth is that?
Through the chair, this is a loan to the Rainbow Ski Field. It is in its last year, and it is being repaid, has been repaid every year by means of a grant from council.
Really? Thank you. Never seen the grants actually approved through a committee, but obviously there is a resolution that allows that.
Presumably, yes. Okay. Okay, so no other questions. Oh, there is another question.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, yes, there is. Just in relation to page 38, I just wonder if Tracy could explain to me about the reserves. I think I understand what they are, but I would like to hear the accountant's explanation. Thank you.
Through the chair. We have two different types of reserves, largely. One type of reserve which are really the one, oh no, three different types, really the ones on page 38. They're specific reserves, and they're largely from bequests from ratepayers for specific purposes, and we hold those on the balance sheet until we are in a position to use those funds for whatever the purpose of that bequest was. We also have asset revaluation reserves. Many of you will be aware that every year we undergo asset revaluations, mainly for our infrastructure, also for land, and that's where these changes in valuation sit. And we have reserves also relating to depreciation. This is where we have funded depreciation, and in a given year we might not have had a capital program to use those funds, so the extra is sitting there in reserves.
Apologies, Mr. Chair, I actually did have a second question, which is just back on page, previous page, page 37. And under the heading non-current liabilities other, the first item there is what's called a suspensory loan non-current, and I just wonder what that might be for 877,000.
Through the chair. This suspensory loan, it's to do with, it was a loan in inverted commas, given to us by Housing New Zealand for the work done on the Orchard Street flats. Technically, it's a suspensory loan because I think it's got a 20 or 25-year term. If we were to convert those to non-social housing, then we would be required to pay it back.
Thank you very much. I remember that, so that's good. It's actually really quite satisfying to see this balance sheet. I know that might sound, I'm getting terribly worried that my Accounting 101 is coming back into play, but it's actually very satisfying to see the how the balance sheet is compiled and be able to relate it back to resolutions of council and the activity of council. So thank you.
And also the detail that's included in there, like the unpaid deposits, you know, we've got those. We can sort of figure out what to do with them, I suppose, in due course. One more question from Councillor Noonan.
One more, thank you. Page 35, 679,258, holiday pay accrual. That just sounds like a lot for not a lot of staff. I'm just wondering if they need to go away and have some holidays.
Through the chair, excuse me again. The holiday pay accrual is recalculated every year for annual report. We have done quite a lot of work as an organisation in reducing that accrual over recent years, and it has been rather successful, as I understand it. There's not a lot of people now who have over 4 weeks, I think is the standard.
And is that including long service leave that hasn't been taken as well? Or anything else other than normal leave or long service leave?
No long service leave isn't included. There is a separate line here for long service leave. Yes, so that is just normal holiday pay.
Okay, if there's no other questions on the balance sheet report, thank you for putting this in front of us today. I was always reasonably confident that they're all being reconciled, which was the point of it, but it's interesting to see what's in there. So look, if I have a mover for the resolution that the balance sheet and its attachments be received. Thank you, Councillor McGurk. Seconded. Thank you, Councillor Barker. Any other discussion? I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is the, thank you, Lynn. We'll move on to the next item, which is the Audit, Risk and Finance Subcommittee Work Plan. And we have a report here on the activities of, oh sorry, this is the committee work plan, yes, wrong item. Yes, so we have here the Audit and Risk and Finance Committee work plan, and it outlines in there just what we've got coming up. So I will pass it over to Nikki to have a quick word about it, and then we'll open it up for discussion.
Through the chair, the chair of the Audit, Risk and Finance Subcommittee, Mr. John Peters, asked me to pull together a bit of a work plan. So this is actually a 3-year work plan. I've only put the columns in up to the election in terms of the scheduled meetings that we have between now and the end of this term. However, this is actually a comprehensive plan that effectively covers 3 years of a work program of regular items that should be coming up through the committee, and I'm happy to take any feedback or questions on this, please.
So just for clarification, if we wanted to have a look at, say, what you've got scheduled for October 16 through to October 17, then that's in a document somewhere on the Google Drive?
Through the chair, I haven't actually. Through the chair, I think it's probably confused people by not putting in those. If you actually have a look at the next review date, that should give you an idea of the program. So this is a complete program. This is the entire 3-year program. And if you look at that review date column, you'll get a feel for when they would be coming up to the committee.
So for instance, if I have a look at the fraud prevention policy, which is just up from the bottom, you've got there that we reviewed it in October 14, the next review is October 16, so that would be a tick in the column October 16 if it was on here. That's essentially what you're saying.
Through the chair, and the nearest meeting to that date sort of thing. It's unlikely there would be any meetings in October 16.
Okay, Councillor McGurk.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. In light of the comments from Ms. Harrison, I see things like the conflict of interest policy under risk management. We don't have there's never been checked, there's no date, there's no bring up date and those sorts of things. And when we said that the list is complete, I assume that the risks that we're talking about are the ones listed there, but there's a couple there that come up and never been reviewed, and there's no date that they are likely to be reviewed. Just wondered if there's a comment and a couple there that was still to be developed.
Through the chair, all of the above. Sorry, the conflict of interest policy, I mean, that's something that's always, has never actually gone through a committee. That's currently being developed at the moment and will come up reasonably soon, and I do apologise, I haven't got a date there.
Any other ones?
Through the chair, the tax governance framework, we're currently working with our tax advisors, PricewaterhouseCoopers, to develop a framework, and that would be something that would come to a committee, and depending on timing, it may come up this this calendar year. But until such time we've actually got the work done. So there are a few gaps here. I suppose through the chair, what I was looking for was some feedback on whether or not this list of the sort of things that we're bringing up to the committee are the sort of things you would be expecting to see.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this looks like a good comprehensive list, and the timeframes on there look reasonable. I would suggest that if there was particular legislation change or an organisational risk arose, that where you felt that we needed to change the policy, that they would come back to the committee sooner. So I'm just anticipating that that's a part of the system checks. In terms of that conflict of interest policy, can I just clarify whether that's for staff or staff and elected members?
Through the chair, I think it's been developed specifically for staff. I think the councillors have different requirements and different pieces of legislation that are applicable. So through the chair, this is the staff view of how staff deal with conflicts of interest in their day-to-day business.
All right, well, and that's what I'd assumed that it would be, because we have our code of conduct which deals with some of those matters. I would say that I think that is an important issue, and because it goes to issues around public confidence, and I think we really should perhaps spend some time thinking about when that could come forward and how we would develop it, because it is an issue in terms of which we see on a reasonably regular basis of conflict of interest accusations being raised, which we then have to deal with to unpick. And I think with not having a policy document sitting behind that, well, I'll put it this way, having a policy document sitting behind that, I think would provide a degree of robustness to what we're doing. It is a real dilemma, I think, that goes back to that previous report in terms of public perception. And in a public organisation, this is always one of the things that leaves us, it's an easy target to say, oh, if you don't like the decision, to say, oh, that's because there was some bias somewhere. And that's a very easy target. So I'm quite keen to remove the opportunity as much as we can for those targets to be there. I'm quite confident in that the conflicts of interest are managed by the organisation, but I think having a policy document that sits behind it would be useful.
Absolutely.
Through the chair, just to clarify, there has been a conflict of interest policy in place for a number of years, and I will look to bring that policy to the next subcommittee meeting so that you can actually see what we have in place. Through the chair, what the piece of work which has kind of held it up was really that we've developed a conflicts of interest register so that we can actually record it in our systems, because there are numerous types of contracts that we get ones disclosed to us at that point of employment. Obviously there'll be some conflicts that come up during interactions, whether it may be a tender that they're involved with, etc. So we're just resolving those reporting issues, and I'm happy to bring that policy to the next
Thank you very much.
meeting.
Thank you.
Councillor Barker.
Thank you. I'm just curious about the sensitive expenditure policy. Under sensitive expenditure, what are we looking at there?
Through the chair, it's things like air travel, credit cards, you know, meal allowances when you're away, on council work, that sort of stuff, and it's just giving staff guidance on that.
Any other questions? Okay. Just one. I presume we've got the procurement policy, which according to this was going to come to this meeting. By the look of it, it will flick out. We'll bring it to the next one or the one after.
Through the chair, we've done a reasonably thorough review of the procurement policy this time round, and it's now scheduled to come to the next meeting.
Thank you. Okay, so look, if there's no other questions, I'm happy to put the resolution that the Audit, Risk and Finance Committee work plan and its attachments be received. Do I have a mover for that? Thank you, Mayor Rees. Seconder. Thank you, Councillor Barker.
Yes.
Any further discussion? No other discussion. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Do we need that to go through as well? Okay. We don't need the other recommendation because we've done the feedback thing. Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is the internal audit report to March 16. Welcome, Lynn. We have quite a comprehensive report here on the internal audit, which is a bit of a balancing act. I can appreciate that. So, Lynn, I'll pass that over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Right. Okay, yes, it has been a bit of a balancing act. As I've noted on the report, that the progress isn't as great as we'd hoped. And a lot of that's got to do with the bedding in period, where this is a very new process for council, and it's quite hard for officers to be setting time aside to be able to complete the interviews that I have with them and to get some of the work done for me, and also for them to do their audit plans at the end of that. The time frames are a little bit more difficult than we had imagined, and also there's the reporting is not as efficient as it needs to be, and it's proving to take a lot longer than it should. But I am very pleased to say that from the report that you've got here, there are a lot of audits that have been completed to different stages. Most of those are simply requiring managers to get back to me at various stages. It might be to agree on the audit findings that I've done, or it may be to give me their audit plans. So in total there have actually been 9 audits to that almost final stage, with them being in control. So it's a lot better than it looks there. To date, there hasn't been many serious or high or significant findings. There have been a number that are close to that in terms of their controls that people are unaware of, I think, is the main point I'd make about that. It's lack of awareness, and because they haven't been addressed before, they just need to be put in place. So my focus has been quite strongly on making sure that the controls actually are there, rather than doing a transaction by transaction analysis. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that. Questions, Councillor Matheson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Lynn. If I went to page 45 and 46, I notice on page 46 that those particular items haven't been completed as yet.
Yeah.
The one that stood out to me on page 45 was when we had cash handling Civic House. You agreed there was 2 there that were at some significance and risk. And then I immediately looked down to banking controls and wondered whether there was a marriage there somewhere that would also produce that sort of similar concern.
Through the chair, I don't think so. The banking is mainly automated through our accounting information system. These ones of high concern, and I know I just would like you to know that the audit conclusion isn't included in there because SLT hadn't reviewed the report before this this particular report was completed. No, I think that what will come out of banking will be completely different. I feel quite confident about the controls in banking.
Thank you. And through you, just one other quick question. The ones yet to be completed on that page, are there any, since you printed this, that have actually been done of those?
Through the chair, are you talking about on page 45?
Yes, I am.
Yes, I can tell you that the electronic purchase order, that's in the state that you show there. The segregation of duties and IT systems access are being combined into one, and the draft is going to managers today. The accounts payable new suppliers and the accounts payable, which has got an audit of GST numbers, and the accounts payable with master file changes have all been combined into one audit, and that's complete. That's waiting for managers to have an exit meeting on the 23rd of June. I've had to push it out a long way because I just can't get the managers together. Well, we've talked about the cash handling one, which is...
And on page 46?
On page 46, no, there aren't, but I can say that the GST one, I think, wasn't planned till the fourth quarter, so it's one that we weren't expecting to do. And also the weighbridge, which was the first one that I did, which isn't on this plan, that was completed as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other, yes, Mary?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lynn, what can we do to help here? So I understand that obviously this has been, quite a steep learning curve for the organisation, and there's been a lot of we've needed to bed this in, and we're needing to refine reporting. But moving forward, just picking up your comment before about the challenge of actually finding a date where you can get managers together to do the debriefs. Is there something that we can do here to help make this a priority? Because it is a priority.
And also, if I could comment, to bring these ones with time permitting sort of a wee bit more, I'm hearing Lynn's sort of like working very hard through all these matters, but there's just too many to get through, so perhaps that's a resourcing issue. I'm not sure though. So I'll just add that little bit on. So that same question.
Through the chair, I think that some of it will come together a lot better over time because I'll get more efficient at it. The reporting will become better. In terms of getting the managers together, unfortunately in my plan I probably haven't thought carefully enough about spreading the audits through the organisation rather than them resting on the shoulders of one or two managers who are incredibly busy at the moment. So, the impact on them is quite significant when they get bombarded with one after another of the audit results.
Well, I wonder, Mr. Chair, whether in terms of this, the next stage of a review of process and timing, whether there's an ability to agree to a timetable for the year where different audits are happening at stages to avoid that sort of double up when you've got parts of the organisation that are extremely busy as we're going through annual planning time. There might be other parts of the organisation that actually would be better timetabled. And I wonder if that, I mean, I'm sure, Linda, these are things that you're contemplating, but I'd just encourage perhaps that the senior leadership team could sign out an annual kind of agreement to ensure the staff are available in a timetable that would work. Because it does, for this to be effective, we all have to play our part, but equally people have got to have the capacity to respond to the learning through this that Lynn's trying to achieve. So I did feel a bit concerned that we had so many that were sitting out here at the moment with time permitting, but I'm also very conscious that we have to get this right to get the value out of it, and I think that that's certainly what Lynn's been aiming to achieve. It's the moving forward. I would like to see this as an organisational priority.
And if I could perhaps comment, that my experience in this sort of sector is that everybody is always too busy to help with the internal audit side of things, and that's nothing about anyone in particular. It's just one of those things, and an organisation learning to live with that needs to understand that when Lynn turns up, they stand at their desk and give her all the help she can to get through, regardless of what's going on. Appreciating there are some very peak periods, but it's never a good time to have an internal audit, is it?
Through the chair, no, it's not. And I must say that everyone has been really receptive. The other aspect too is that I think what I have found I have done, and maybe the committee wants to have a view on this, but I've probably gone into more depth than I might otherwise have done had there been prior audits throughout council. So it takes a lot longer to actually get all the information together.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McGurk.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Lynn. I was pleased to hear that the reaction of the staff is, they are receptive. I'm just wondering, is there an opportunity, I suppose, if we're looking at a learning organisation, is that we're learning as these audits are coming out, we're getting an idea of what good looks like and what excellence looks like. Is there an opportunity, without sort of delving in the area of management, in terms of resourcing, about utilising some of the officers in the audit process? I know, apart from just, the way you're putting it to me, it appears like it's it's almost like a compliance to make sure that we are doing the things we're wanting to do. But I'm just wondering if we're taking to another stage about, becoming even better at what we're doing, and using some of the learnings as you're going through these processes, looking for those better ways. Which, if you're using a benchmarking, you're looking at something that already exists and comparing yourself. But it's about trying to sort of look for exemplars and building on that.
Through the chair, in all the audits that I do, I'm looking at process improvement, and it's not just a compliance audit. It is looking at efficiencies and that kind of thing. So yes, and comparing with others for best practice. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, a lot of what you're talking about is the sort of things I'm talking about. But well, just be interested to know what the reaction of staff is that, in terms of looking at what excellence looks like. Is there opportunities to look for those incremental improvements? You're getting feedback from staff saying this would be a better way of doing something, or as an example.
Through the chair, I think that the simple process of going through an internal audit makes people look at their systems. It's what it does.
Okay, so if there's no other questions, I suppose my takeaway is from this discussion is around the SLT having a look at programming forward and resourcing, or looking at how that's being resourced to see if we can't make these deadlines and timeframes. Appreciating it has been a very, very busy period, and certainly want to thank you for your work in this space. It's we all appreciate that the ground is settling, so to speak. So that being the case, look, on the resolution is in front of us is that we note the internal audit findings and recommendations and status action plans up to the 31st of March 16. Do I have a mover for that resolution?
I'll move it and appreciate the work that's gone into it and look forward to seeing it develop in the future.
Yep, thank you, Councillor Barker.
So moved.
Oh, is there a receiver as well? Okay, and to receive it?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, can I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor McGurk. Any other discussion? No discussion, I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Okay, we move to the corporate report, pages 49 to 61. There's two resolutions, one's to receive this, and there's a little bit of transfer for legal budget, which we'll come to no doubt in the report. Tracy, welcome back.
Through the chair. Welcome to the corporate report for the 31st of March. So this is 2 months on from the last one you will have seen. The good news is that although we are still very underspent in a lot of our budgets, the tide has started to turn. So the gap increased in January but has decreased slightly. Sorry, it increased in February but has decreased slightly in March. And this is what we would normally expect, where people seem more focused on spending their budgets towards the end of the year. And there's some natural timing in that as well. On page 52, which is your headline results financial measures, I've made a slight adjustment here. I've given you a new icon, an arrow, which I've called a variance trend. The direction of the arrow indicates whether the variance is increasing or decreasing. The colour of the arrow indicates whether or not that's a good thing. And it very much depends whether the variance in the first place is an over or under as to what colour it turns out, if you like. Can be arranged. The operating expenditure underspend year to date is $5.2 million. This includes both closed accounts and those accounts that are funded by rates. We've done some work in the last few weeks with managers looking at forecasting. So this isn't represented on these charts. This is just something, in fact, yesterday was the deadline for them to do that work, so I've only got a very preliminary idea. And I was just looking at non-closed accounts. And the good news is that the work that they've done indicates that the underspend in particular isn't going to be nearly as large as it looks at the moment. There's going to be some request for carry forward, and a lot of that relates to studies and strategies that have been delayed for various reasons, and that's quite a lot of money as well. It's about $800,000 that people are going to request. This isn't going to be automatic, it's going to go through a process. Outside of that, there's about another $400,000 which look to be savings in rates. I think that's the news. Happy to take any questions.
So just to clarify that comment, you're essentially saying that we will be there or thereabouts on the budget at year end, well, less than 5%, which is what we're currently tracking at in these reports. So somewhat less than that, so it might be 3 or 2 without committing, because I appreciate it's a difficult thing. But you're not expecting any major budget blowouts in any of the areas which would change that position.
Through the chair, a couple of things. I'm certainly not expecting any major budget blowouts. That's not my information at all. I'm more concerned about people managing to spend the money they have available. I'm not going to put a figure on it. I would be surprised if it was less than 5%, to be honest, because we've got a number of big things in there that that actually one thing I'm thinking of in particular wasn't actually picked up in the forecast. Was about, and it's about $700,000, which is that the money we've allocated as a grant to the School of Music. My understanding is that that's fairly unlikely to be picked up before the end of the year. So that in itself is significant. Yes, so as I say, very preliminary, hasn't been taken through to its natural conclusion. Also, the closed accounts include landfill, all of the solid waste things, and there's some quite significant movements in there, which when you look at my headline, which says 5.2 million less than operating budget, quite a chunk of that, for instance, is landfill.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor McGurk.
Yeah. Thanks, Tracy. In fact, I did have a question about the Nelson School of Music Carriford, but you've answered that question. I've got a couple of questions here. In terms of your, not expecting any blowouts, is that in terms of operational expenditure, or is that the CapEx, or both combined?
Through the chair, I was referencing at the time just operating expenditure.
Okay, that's fine. In terms of, well, talk about capital expenditure, I see we've got quite a lag there, and we're trending down. It seems the gap's getting wider, but I know we've got quite a bit, see the commentary there, we've got quite a bit of capital works currently underway. I'm just wondering, are we likely to close that gap between the budget, what we're budgeted, and what we're actual expenditure? Or we're going to be another shortfall?
So through the chair, we have 2 months left of this financial year, and there's a lot of work that's on site, and there's a lot of money that will be spent leading up to the end of the financial year. So we anticipate that there's going to be a lot of invoices coming in. For example, we're ordering a fair amount of pipes on the Maitai pipeline, duplication. The contractor will, as soon as they finish the York crossing, they will begin Little Ghost Stream. So there's a lot of work that will come in. So we do believe that gap will be closing in terms of what we anticipate we will spend and what the actual spend will be.
Rightio. Yeah. That helps. In terms of the forestry delays, so look at the commentary on page, is it 53? It's 53. Might be 53 or 54.
Through the chair, it's the second bullet point on 53.
Oh, right, yeah, there we are, forestry. It's just, the question I've got is, what forestry blocks didn't we harvest?
So through the chair, we, from memory, we didn't harvest the block up the Maitai. I think there was a second block that was proposed to be done that we haven't undertaken. So we've only processed one, and that's the block.
So that's basically lost. We're not intending to harvest that.
It's unlikely that we will get that done this financial year.
No, that's it.
Okay, any other questions or comments? We'll run through them through the schedules in a minute. We'll go through the appendices one at a time, 4 questions on those if you would like. But in terms of the front section of the report, which outlines our operating expenditure and our revenues, any further questions on that?
Just a comment on water by by metre is $139 overspent. That made me think about the amount of water that went onto that fire in Quarantine Road, which hasn't gone through meters. If we're trying to ever calculate our water lossage through the water system, that sort of thing occurs, it's really going to blow. We have no idea whatsoever after that how much water we're losing through the pipes. What's your comment? I just want to ask about that.
So through the chair, I don't think we'll ever quite know the volume of water that they used to put out that fire, and it is substantial, and it does have a bearing. We're talking a substantial amount, and we don't recover those costs. We don't recover those costs from the fire department or anybody else that for the cost of putting out fires. We don't. So
my worry there is that we try and calculate what our lossage is out of our water pipeline. How efficient is our water pipeline system? How good is our asset? Is it up to date? Is it full of leaks? We'll never really know.
So through the chair, we have a process whereby we have meters, bulk meters, and measuring mag flow meters on our pipeline system for that very reason, as per for sectors. So we have an idea. We know that we do have water losses. But the point I was trying to make is that when we have a major fire like we had at Miller's, and we're still able to ascertain the usage of water, we can have an estimate, a guess at that, because it's going through our meters. But to quantify that in terms of the leaks as well as the fire is a difficult analysis to undertake, and we don't recover those costs.
Mayor Rees?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're dealing with pages sort of 52, 53 and 54 at this stage. Righty-ho, great. So I just want to come back to the one of my usual concerns, which is around that capital expenditure 11.2 unfavourable, under budget at the moment. So Alec, what you're saying to us is that you're still feeling confident over these next couple of months that we're going to be hitting the KPI around this?
Through the chair, at this stage, we believe that the KPI will be met.
Okay. Just going on to a couple of other questions, if I could, Mr. Chair. Just in relation to page 53, there's a discussion there around operating expenditure highlighted in blue, 5.2 less than the operating budget. And there is advice this time around that the collective agreement has been settled and back pay is from July 2015, but the individual employment agreements are due to be settled in May. I'm not sure if this is a financial question, or maybe one the Chief Executive needs to answer, but that seems to be an extraordinarily long period of time to have those outstanding. So I'm taking it that the individual employment agreements are also going to have to be backdated nearly, 11 months. So I'm just wondering if we could have an explanation as to why it takes that long to settle, to reach those agreements.
I would completely agree with the Mayor that the time frame is considerably less than ideal. It has been driven in large part by the need to negotiate with the PSA in the first instance, because the negotiations with the collective has to take precedence over negotiations with individual employee agreements. Settlement with the collective wasn't achieved until, I'm looking at Ms. Harrison, I'm thinking March this year. It was certainly very difficult to achieve timeframes that we could meet with the bargaining agents for the PSA early in the first part of this year. So once that was achieved, we were then able to negotiate with individual employees on individual employee agreements, and that's now been given effect to.
So, Mr. Chair, I think it might be helpful to understand why they're related. So you could imagine that somebody who's sitting there on an individual employment agreement is thinking, well, let's just agree and get it signed up. So I think it might be useful to
understand the relationship between the two.
Mr. Chair, my apologies. I didn't catch just exactly where the reference is to it in the...
Apologies, it's page 53. In the middle, there's a
yes.
blue...
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So, this is where an employer is a little caught in terms of employment legislation, that one must have good faith in undertaking the bargaining, and that starts with the union in the first instance, and your ability to communicate or negotiate with individual employees is particularly constrained until after the union negotiations have been completed. There was some communication to staff through their managers in order to ensure that we weren't seen as not complying with those good faith obligations. What actually happened, it's not the Nelson City Council's way to apply back pay in 2 different periods. Usually we would do it all as one hit, so to speak, but actually because of the time frame, in fact the collective must have been settled about the end of February, because we did work really hard to get the back pays paid out to those people who were on the collective before the end of the financial year, because nowadays to be an employer you need to consider not only what you pay people but what the impact will be on their taxable income, and for those people who have working for families benefits, they want that sort of dealt with within the financial year. I deeply regret that we couldn't get all employees dealt with within the end of the financial year, but there was the split this time so that we could at least effect it for those that we could effect it for.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so if there's no other questions on pages through to page 54, we'll move to page 55, which is our treasury measures. Anybody want to comment on that page? Other to note that our debt as at the end of March looked to be about 76 million, up from 30 June position of 74 million. Doesn't seem to have moved very far over the year in the external debt. And I think the point to note for the committee is actually the bottom left-hand box, where you can see we've got green triangles in all of our compliance areas. So we're well within our policies and our limits. Did you want to make a comment?
Through the chair, I'm just pleased to report that our debt is now 82 million.
Thank you. No other questions on that one? Page 56, which is the balance sheet. Nothing jumped out of me about that one. Page 57, this is the data analysis report. Any other comments on that?
Mr. Chair, I do have questions, but we'll need to go into public excluded for me to be able to ask them, just in relation to the detail at the bottom, I suspect. Because they go to discussions around negotiation, and I'd have to be I'd actually like some more detail about what these are. But I think
On page 57?
On page 57. I mean, I can ask them in here, but I think the officers would be reluctant to identify the parties.
Okay.
But I'll take advice on that. If they're comfortable doing it, I'll ask.
We'll move. Yes, if we could just adjourn at this stage, please. lost quorum now. Yes, we have. It's just me and the mayor, so we haven't re-adjourned yet, so we'll just continue with the adjournment until our committee comes back. Thank you. I'd just like to re-adjourn the meeting, reconvene the meeting. Is that, yeah, thank you very much, EJ. Look, we've had a discussion about the proposal to move into public exclusion to discuss the items on page 57 a little bit closer, and decided that we will not do that at this stage, and we will continue moving through the report. Given that those ones that are outstanding are under management and do have a plan in place to resolve. So page 58, we've got there our capital expenditure. There has been questions asked about that. Any other questions on capital expenditure?
Good. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking at page 59, and I noticed that the membranes have been installed. That was pretty quick.
Through the chair, yes, not only have they been installed, they've been commissioned, and we're running 5 trains more efficiently, and it's working very, very well.
I'm quite, it's not an easy process. When I saw completed, I thought, well done.
Thank you very much, and the staff have worked. I'll pass that comment on to the staff, because it's been a difficult project, and it's been quite difficult. It's just been a complex project, but the staff have done brilliantly, and I'll pass on your thank you.
Any other questions on pages 59 to 61, which outlines our capital works program?
Similarly, Mr. Chair, I'd also look at the bottom of that page at the Calder Park sewer pump station upgrade and note that that's indicating it's on track for completion in May. Again, that's another very large project, so certainly worthy of recognition in terms of getting that one through. Quite a complex job, so this is where we start to see some of that big capital budget coming through, because they are multi-million-dollar. Each one of these is a multi-million-dollar project, so certainly well done to the team for that one, because that has been, again, another very complicated job.
On time and on budget.
And if I can just add to that, there's quite a few projects which seem to have come to fruition quite quickly and effectively in this report, Mr. Chair, and I presume that leaves some room for projects for next year.
Okay, so if there's no other questions, we'll just go back to the resolution. I'm just struggling to find the page at the moment. Just bear with. 49, that's it. Okay. So we have 2 resolutions. One is to receive the report, which we've been through it, so I'm okay to get into that one in a minute. But the second one is that the transfer of legal budget from the corporate activity to planning activity in 2015-16 in order to obtain economic and traffic evidence for the submission to the TDC on the proposed Progressive Enterprise Limited private plan change to be noted. We haven't had any discussion on that, and I just wondered if perhaps someone could talk to that, please.
apologies, Mr Chair, I had to find my agenda again. There was a report put to the Planning and Regulatory Committee seeking support for a submission to be lodged with Tasman District in relation to a private plan change that has been lodged with them by Progressive Enterprises. That report acknowledged the need for expert traffic and economic advice, but it didn't specify whether or not there would be budget or there would need to be unbudgeted funding applied to that to provide for that. This recommendation is saying that there is legal budget within the corporate activity which we feel confident, given that we are at the 10th of May, will not be spent by 30 June, and suggest that that is an appropriate place from which to take funding to apply to that expert evidence that's required.
Thank you for that. A wee bit of a supplementary question though. Is the traffic side of it not in the original application, or are we recreating information here? Or are we creating information to argue against some other information?
Mr Chair, in putting our submission in, we are saying that it will have adverse negative impacts on traffic flow, and what's required is for us to provide expert evidence. In short, to refute the claims that the applicant has made in his application.
So just one follow-on question from that then, given that this just intrigues me immensely, have we got any, the answer is going to be no, I'm sure, but I've got to ask it, have we got any redress to the TDC for our costs that we're incurring for something that's going into their district?
I'm grateful for your acknowledgement of the likely answer, Mr Chair. No.
I would say thank you, but I'm not sure. Mayor Rees.
Look, I'm happy to support the recommendation with the explanation from the Chief Executive that we're heading towards expert caucusing. I would hope that through that process there can be some common ground found, and that is the purpose of expert caucusing, to see if we can get matters resolved. So it's not a particularly desirable situation to be opposing a neighbouring authority's plan change, and I much prefer a situation where the experts can get together and exactly reach some resolution on what the effects that may be and how they could be addressed. So on that proviso, I'm happy to support both the receiving of the report and the recommendation.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so on that basis, given that the Mayor seems to have indicated that she'll move both of those resolutions, can I have a seconder for both of them? Thank you, Councillor McGurk. Any other discussion on the motions?
I think we're doing the thing that we've virtually established a policy on through the committee, that we do definitely want to take this action.
Other than to thank Tracy for your report, appreciate that. And if there's no other discussion, I'll put the resolutions. All those in favour say aye. Against?
That's right.
Carried. Not sure what I could have done then.
My apologies, Mr Chair, this is a bit naughty, but I was actually, the Chief Secretary just reminding me, which was quite rightly, that this is actually a private plan change, not Tasman District Council's plan change, which is important to note. So,
thank you for noting that. I'm sure that that will be reflected in the minutes if indeed it is captured. Okay, before I close the meeting, I'd just like to thank everybody for being in attendance and for coming back to the meeting when we adjourned it. And on that basis, I'll declare the meeting closed. Okay. So EJ is telling me that there is lunch in Room Ana, but before we go through to lunch, what I'll do is I'll open the commercial meeting because that's got to start now, and then we'll adjourn for lunch. So thank you very much. just take 2 minutes. Okay, thank you. Welcome to today's commercial subcommittee meeting, today on the 10th of May. We have the agendas in front of us. We have an apology which has been received from Mr. John Peters and from Councillor Ackland. Everyone else appears to be here, so there's no other apologies. Can I have a mover to accept those apologies? Thank you, Councillor Noonan. Seconded, Mayor Rees, thank you. I'll put those apologies. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Order of business, confirmation that we will follow the agenda as outlined. Any interests in the matters on this agenda today? No, thank you. I haven't been notified of any matters of public forum, so there's nothing there. Confirmation of minutes. We have in front of us the minutes of the meeting of 31 March. They're included with the agenda, pages 5 to 8. Can I have a mover that those minutes be confirmed as a true and correct record? Thank you, Councillor Noonan. I'm happy to second that. Any discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. There is no chairperson's report. Then we move into public excluded part of the business, and there's a resolution there to achieve that.
Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to move that resolution to move into public excluded business, but I would just like to note that as Mayor, I'm an ex officio member of this committee, but in order for this committee to conduct its business today, I'm going to have to be here. And when we've got small subcommittees, late notice apologies do make it quite difficult. I had Mr. Peters' apology well ahead of time, but I would just perhaps ask and that might be something that I need to follow up as in my role as Mayor, that we do get these for these committees. It is really important that the members do hear. I should have raised that during which was my slight hesitation on seconding the apology, so sorry to backtrack, but I will be here for the public excluded, otherwise we're not going to be able to have a meeting. So I'm happy to move into public excluded, noting that I will still be here.
Thank you, yes. Yeah, and point noted, it is a small committee and we do need everybody here. So, Mayor Rees, you're happy to move into public excluded. I'm happy to second that. Any discussion on the motion? No. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. We'll now adjourn the meeting.